Oh, my green screen out. All right. Sorry guys, trying to get. Now my filtering doesn't seem to want to behave. There we go. All right. Welcome to another episode of Full Circle. I'm Chad, your host, who's trying to not get his face to blend in with his background too much. Cheddar Caveman on all the things, which you know already because that's at the end of my YouTube channel. So, I think for the first time ever, we don't really have like any news. Lachlan's right around the corner. I imagine Privateer's kind of buttoned up until that's over. It's a pretty busy event. Anybody who's ever planned a convention can tell you there's a lot of work. They're all hands on, I'm sure, for that, and they're busy. That's why we haven't seen anything in the CID, and I'm guessing why the Trencher one wrapped up a little bit quicker than usual. We're looking at Grimkin. They're coming out. We'll be interested to see their final form. We talked last week about the stuff coming out of CID with Fulcrum and whatnot, and I think that was very promising. We did see some changes from the last version, but all with some good explanations. So Lachlan coming up. Interesting note at the European Team Championship, the ETC, the team that won was from Germany, and they were fielding three Scorn players. Three Scorn players out of five. The other one was Crix and Signar. Just took down an event. So that's neat. May or may not be more Scorn to deal with in the future. We shall see. I think if there is, that's kind of okay with us. But certainly don't underestimate Scorn. They are a relevant faction. They're going to be getting some more themes here in the fall. And yeah. So that's cool. I don't really have any new specific topics. We're going to go into talking about some of the things that haven't yet been discussed, I think. A couple warlocks still remain and a few things of that nature. So that's what we're going to talk about. And then we'll see what's left. If you have any questions, throw them in the chat while we're going along. If you're watching it live, if you're watching this via the replay, then feel free to throw up a question in the circle group or shoot me a message. I still do want to a couple things I have in mind. I'd like to maybe at some point attempt to see if we can't get a guest or two on a show, maybe so that my normal format is to kind of go through everything, but we're pretty much pulling in on the having gone through the full faction. Obviously, I spent some time doing some battle reports, tournament talk, list discussion, and we're starting the new tactics format. I'd also like to small chance I may attempt streaming some games, or if I'm feeling particularly feisty, I actually prefer the format where we can cut the game down to about 30 to 60 minutes and then talk through what's happening with it. And I just because I feel like that is what there's only so much attention span, right? And like a full 2-hour game is just a lot. So with that in mind, I decided, mostly while I was talking here and with what remains to discuss, that we're going to do the theme of what, I'm double checking what I've gone through. I think our theme for discussion tonight will be cav models. And we can mix it up a little bit with theirs, so we're gonna get some cav in there. We may have 2 episodes of cav models. Actually, we already did have Morvana 2, so that's 1 out of the way. But let's take a look at what's out there. So let's just start with the Wolves Warboros. Sorry, not Wolves Warboros. Cav Tharn Wolf Riders. There's a wolf. They're on a wolf. I'm confused. All right. Tharn Wolf Riders. They are speed 9. They are strength 6, mat 6, rat 6, defense 14, armor 14. They are command 9. They have assault. They are cavalry models. They have pathfinder. They are on a large base. In case you don't know, the cards now show you the base size, generally underneath the command, but in that row. You get 3 models for 11 points, or 5 models for 18 points. They're field allowance 2. They each have 5 wounds. They have they have ranged attack, which is a thrown javelin, which is a pound 9 weapon master attack. I'm going to jump ahead. It has the thrown rule, which says any modifiers to the model's strength, or you apply any modifiers to the strength to the power of that weapon. And then they have, in melee, they have 1 inch power and strength 9 weapon master melee attacks, and they also have a power 12 mount attack. They additionally, they have annoyance, which is living enemy models within 1 inch of this model suffer -1 to attack rolls, and they also have reposition 5, which allows them, if they did not run or fail a charge, they can advance up to 5 inches at the end of their activation. Then it ends. And it does note here, tactical tips are now in War Room, so I'll read this because I think it's relevant. If a model is part of the unit, its activation does not end until all models in its unit have completed their activations. So basically what that means is they all reposition at the same time at the end, assuming they met the qualifications to do so. You don't finish the attacks of one and then reposition. So Tharn Wolf Riders. We'll start here. We may talk about the solo that goes with them a little bit here in a minute, but a lot of people are pretty meh on them, and I can understand why. Cavalry are difficult to play. I think a lot of people see that they also, from Mark 1 till present, and I didn't play Mark 1, but I have seen some of the rules. From Mark 1 till present, this unit has like consistently sort of just been knocked down, and moving from Mark 2 to 3 didn't necessarily totally knock it down. I don't necessarily want to give you that notion. But it's easy to see rules that have changed, right? So Mark 1, they had a bunch of rules. They could ignore the information. So basically there were like 5 solos, but they activated at the same time. But they could be anywhere. No unit coherency, basically. And they worked extremely well with Chromac 1's Berserk spell that he had in Mark 1, apparently. Again, didn't play then. As I transitioned to Mark 2, I played them a little bit. They had Hunter, they had Lucky, which allowed on their throw, which allowed them a second try. They still had Assault then. And a Hunter was better then on top of it. And they also had Prey. And sort of what happened in Mark 2 for most people was they looked at, and they were defense 15 instead of 14 in Mark 2. So when a lot of people in Mark 2 looked at them, and the blood trackers back then had reposition, what is now reposition 3, and you're like, wait a minute, so they're also POW 11 weapon masters on the throw against their prey target. I get, for the same number of points, I get twice as many of them, basically, twice as many models. Actually, a little bit more than that because of Nuala. And you never played that unit without Nuala. Not then, because she gave you that. So I've got 6 more models in this unit, one of which is far and away better, and that's Nuala. They have stealth, which Wolf Riders don't have. And they hit basically just as hard. So they're like, and they're speed 7 versus 9. So like they're so closely comparable. Why am I using Wolf Riders? And they kind of just didn't get a lot of attention in Mark 2. I think they were okay. I think they were hard to play then. So let's move forward into Mark 3. And we're sitting in this position. 11-18 puts them a little bit cheaper than they were in Mark 2. However, as I mentioned, they went down a defense to 14. But they gain annoyance, so now you've got this weird situational sort of like defense 15. And this was sort of a, if you look across the board, almost everything that was defense 15, like units that with multiple models that were defense 15 are no longer that way. There's some niche ones like the Eliminators in Khador and There's solos and things like that. But for the most part, if you were a unit that was defense 15, you've been knocked down a peg to 14. So they sort of retain that in like a loosey-goosey way. They are weapon masters on a, so they're always power 9 in all their attacks. They don't have prey anymore. But what they picked up was weapon master on their melee attacks. So you've kind of got this interesting trade-off where you sort of lost 2 POW on both attacks. Situationally, though, because you had to select prey and you had to be going against your prey. And you sort of traded that for a 1/2 inch of melee range on the javelin charge attack, as well as the weapon master on that melee attack. So now, when they do mix it up in melee, they're better. When you're dealing with using them at range, I would say they're at best even, and maybe a little bit worse because you don't have prey. Reposition 5 is still very strong, and I think one of the things that really differentiates them right now from Blood Trackers, which we talked about before, is Blood Trackers lost reposition. So one of the things that made them really strong was, yeah, they only have a 7-inch range, but they could back up 3 inches, so it sort of made them like kind of an equivalent to a range 10. Because if you think about it, what you're trying to take advantage of with a 10-inch range is the model is going to be, exactly, hopefully, 7 inches away, then you can back up 3. You're 10 inches away from the thing you shot at, and hopefully you're like taking care of the things that are up front, and then you're getting even more out of it. So that's kind of the situation. Now, however, Blood Trackers have Swift Hunter, which is only a 2-inch move at best, and you had to kill the model. So reposition is kind of still just going to be better for you because of the types of targets you can go in on. And you get the equivalent of what is roughly a 12-inch gun. That will be enough, that won't be enough in some cases. The real thing is that if you can put in a... how do I want to say this? If you can put in like if you can afford to put in a quality shot into a Wolf Rider, you'll probably kill it. So the name of the game there to me is, if you're going to play Wolf Riders, you want to play them in a situation where you're minimizing that risk. I think you still want some ways for them to be defensive. I think you still want... you're probably going to want to bring them with a buff, because I think, yeah, Power 9 Weapon Master is okay, and sometimes that's all you really need. But Power 11, or that's really all we can get to. Power 11 Weapon Master is much better. I mean, you cut chuck in any list, I suppose you can go up more a little bit, but so that's kind of the best you're going to be able to hope for with them. That said, I think anybody who can take them up to Power 11 Weapon Masters, especially if you can apply that to throwing, are going to be great. So Balder 1 sticks out. Stone Skin is a fantastic buff. They're already speed 9, going down to 8. Yeah, it does shorten their threat range, but not terribly. And generally, against the things that you need the extra damage on, the shorter range is probably okay. They are Mat and Rat 6. That's pretty good. Of course, we have cavalry rules, giving them boosted attack rolls on the charge, so that makes them very good into any high defense things. They're quite good, I would argue, into things like Circle and Legion. Probably Crix as well, where they're sort of trying to rely a little bit more on defense to carry the day, and then you're getting boosted Mat 6 attack rolls for, just for charging. So, pardon me. So that's a place they're very good. I think Tanith is an interesting place for them. She doesn't do anything defensively for them. I also think they're very strong if you have a list where you want them not in your way. I just mentioned reposition. I've theorized a bit, and maybe we'll come to this in another episode where I like build a list. But I've been thinking a lot that they might be a good fit for, say, a Chromac 1, where I don't want them in the way, but there's sort of dual purpose there, because they can do a little bit more than, say, like Wold Stalkers or Sentry Stones or things like that. And like Skinwalkers obviously take his arm buff really well, but Wolf Riders are there more to trigger your warpath and not be in the way when you need them to, and to do some other things when you do. Keep in mind also minutants of them are quite interesting. So if you have more of a debuff style or maybe a particular reason, 22 points for 2 min units is actually going to be a pretty good potential module to run, actually, as sorry, trying to fix my green screen, as they don't really cost any more points. So you want to be looking there at what makes sense, right? So if you have a unit wide buff, I didn't mention Hand of Fate is fantastic on them from Una, and Mirage is another really interesting spell on them too. Obviously they're already pretty fast, so making them even faster is phenomenal, right? Una 2 is a place I've played them. Baldur 1 is a place I like them. Tanith is an interesting place. Scything Touch is pretty good. And I mean, her spells help you output offense pretty well. Anybody with Crystal Shadows is interesting to think about. I mentioned Hand of Fate. There's probably more, but that's sort of where I've considered them. And I really have liked them that role. And the thing is, we've always been like, oh, what if we have power 11 weapon masters? Well, there's some power 11 weapon masters for you. There's probably a point where their damage does start to fall off. Keep in mind, spiking weapon master attacks is always good. So you've got that going on. Yeah. So in general, that's Wolf Riders. Keep in mind they do also fit in. They also certainly have a home in Devourer's House, so that's another place to give them some strong consideration. Trying to think if there's anything else. For annoyance, sometimes it's going to make more sense to jam them in. Sometimes it will make more sense to keep them away. I think actually try not to commit them to combat too soon, unless you can favorably trade with them. Yeah, so that's Wolf Riders. Let's roll that into talking about the solo now that goes along with them. So this is a model I will admit at this point I have not yet played. So this is only theory. But let me just go over the rules, and then we'll talk a little bit about the role it plays, and maybe a little bit about why I have yet to try it as well. So the Tharn Wolf Rider champion is speed 9, strength 6, mat 7, rat 7, defense 14, armor 14, command 9, assault, cavalry, pathfinder, large base. Has the same throw and javelin, which is a power 9 weapon master that you apply strength to. Strength buff, strength adjusters to. A power 9 1-inch melee weapon master javelin attack, and the power 12 mount. Has 8 wounds rather than the 5. It is field allowance 2 and point cost 8. Pardon me. It also has annoyance, reposition 5, thrown as mentioned. Additional rules on this model are it has quick work. So in case you're unfamiliar, quick work is when this model destroys one or more enemy models with a melee attack during its combat action. Immediately after that attack is resolved, this model can make one basic melee attack. It has jump. So after it makes a full advance during its normal movement, before it performs its combat action, you can place this model anywhere completely within 5 inches of its current location. Any effects that prevent charging also prevent this model from using jump. And finally, veteran leader Tharn Wolf Riders. While in her command range, other friendly Tharn Wolf Riders models gain +1 to attack rolls. No tactical tips on this one. So, Wolf Rider champ. So let's talk real quick. The biggest reason I haven't played it is mostly I haven't found the right niche for it, and it costs 8 points. There are a lot of rules on that model. They're good rules overall, but 8 points for a model that is has a pretty big beacon on it is tricky. I do have a list in mind. I mentioned a Baldur list where I think I want to give it a try. But given what it does and the points it has, it's just been difficult to put it in a list because the amount of finesse that piece will require is significant, because you can't just be there's a threshold where you can kind of just throw points into a list, and if you lose some models or you lose some hit points or take some beating up, that's okay. 8 points for a single solo whose output, we're comparable now to a Scarsfell Griffin in points, which is a model with stealth, 3 initials, speed 7, can put primal on it, it takes a lot more buffs on our faction, etc. So now we're talking about a model that is way more killable, with way less upside. And granted, it can act independent, but I mean, that's the sort of situation that we're looking at. So the list that you're going to play it in needs to have a specific purpose. Now, it can be part of the Tharn theme. That's one good first place to look. It cannot be free, though. It does specify medium or small base on the free model, which is unfortunate. And I think if it was free there, you would see a lot of them. But 8 points, I mean, that's like an automatic 21 free points in a list. And while the thing is, I don't think they're worth that. I think that Privateer would deal with just the amount of rage that the players have for that Fianna list that is, getting 20 free points. Already you'd hear it here too. Even though I think the 6 point mark that those Cav solos are at might be about what I think this one should be at. But that said, let's not assume that any changes are going to come. I think Tharn will probably go in the CID at some point, but we don't know when, and there's no guarantee. I could be wrong. I mean, there's plenty of other themes I could go with first. It's just that's been my gut. So, with that in mind, what is it good? What role does it serve? First thing, a trick. It is speed 9, and it has reposition and jump. That means you always walk, jump, and reposition farther than you run. So you should basically never be running with this model, like ever. There may be some case for that I'm not thinking of, but you walk, jump, and reposition 1 inch farther than you run. So don't. Another little tidbit: veteran leader on this model affects other ones. So if you have 2 solos, and granted that's 16 points. If you do have 2 solos, they will affect each other. So they'll become Matt and Red 8 as long as they can keep each other within 9 inches, which is something that's interesting. Veteran leader is very strong, so the ability to throw those javelins at Rat 6 is good, but they're models that rarely are going to be able to aim, so being able to go up to a 7 or better is going to be strong. So that's one piece. Additionally, so that's the biggest supporting piece. Additionally, with quick work, you're talking about if you get to live the infantry dream, you maybe can assault one model, kill it, either impacts. Wait, I'm sorry, that does not work. The impact attack is not during your combat action, so you wouldn't get attacked. But so let's say you assault one model, you kill it, you redirect your charge target to another infantry model, you kill that, and then you can quick work onto a third model. That's the number you could kill in a given turn. That said, it is a highly mobile solo, and one thing that we are going to start finding, I think, and based on my game I played on Monday and a few others in 2017, the change to solos being able to score flags now makes some scenarios more live than you would think. So for example, I played Spread the Net, so that's the one with the circle in the middle. It's backwards to you. 2 rectangles and then 2 flags. And these flags used to sort of be really awkward because you didn't... if you put your caster on them, you usually couldn't get a Warjack in the zone. So if you had a battle engine, that's okay, but you didn't always have that. And then, so maybe you'd go more centrally, so you can put your caster in the zone and get a beast in the thing, or vice versa. And a lot of times, you could also, by the fact that you had beasts in the zone, you'd be pressuring their flag, so they don't want to put anything on it. Because their caster had to be on it. Well, now solos can score that. So what that means is you can put a model like this that can move 19 inches in a turn. In fact, it can move that far while still making attacks, is a piece that you want to keep track of. So I think that's a very relevant part of this. I also think if you want, there might be times where a min unit plus the solo is the right breakdown for a unit of Wolf Riders. So I talked about it being 8 points, but that's 19 points, so you're talking only one more point, only one less model, and this one's going to make your whole unit more effective and also be able to get into a lot of really interesting positions. That may be the right setup. It's going to be able to get. I mean, this model is somewhat similar to a model with ambush, where you're going to be able to get in their back lines. You're going to be really. I know it has the rule annoyance, but the model is going to be very annoying in that circumstance. I think in other circumstances, so the Baldur list I was talking about, I think it might potentially be a good fit for. I have 8 points that are Bloodweavers in one of the builds, and I found like they were kind of getting in the way, and I felt like maybe another solo in my list would have been good. No, they may just become 2 Night Witches, but with already having the Wolf Riders and sometimes not wanting, as I was just mentioning, not always wanting to commit them into melee right away, being able to have Rat 7 throws is really strong. And I don't really have a lot of map fixers in Baldur 1. So it's just something to keep in mind. I've also done the math on it. I believe, and this is just barely, but on average dice, if you can manage to get a charge on, I should do the math if it's not a charge too. If you can get a charge on a Journeyman Warcaster, she can kill it. And she's one of the few models that may actually be able to do something like that. Now you're saying like that's only 4 points or 0 most of the time. How's that trade? But now you're turning off a Jack because they had to bring a Jack with it. You're also like just turning off Arcane Shield in some lists is phenomenal. It's just something you should keep in mind. I mean, this still applies if a Wolf Rider hits too, but she's more accurate and can more easily get to the back line because of the movement. So I absolutely do not think she's a model for every list, not at this time. There may be some strategy. I have a hard time with this, but there might be some strategy with 2 units of Wolf Riders and 2 of those. Now you're talking, however, you're talking 18 points, another 18 points, so you're up to 36, and another 16 is putting you at 52 points. Like, that is the infantry you can afford to bring. You really, really, really had better be getting enough work out of the rest of your list. Now, there might be something there, like I said, that is a lot of models that are hard to lock down and that can dance around terrain and stuff. But it is a lot of points, and I think if something like that does pick up traction, that it will be because of somebody who's put a lot of time into playing those models does it. I have not been able to put in nearly enough time to playing them for me to feel good about that, and thus this is sort of why we are where we are. So that's the Tharn Wolf Riders and their champion. So I think I'm gonna leave it there. I do hope this is a model, and I normally like to just see the positives in something. It is a bit niche. It is something that I think you really have to think about what you're doing before you put it in. I do think, if I'm being honest, that for the number of points, you need to play it very, very well. You need to work really hard to get your points out of it. And I do think, as I look through a lot of what's out there, that I hope it's a model that gets another look when it goes into the CID. I don't know necessarily that I think it should just be cheaper. I actually think I'd rather it was 8 points and maybe became a little more interesting in how it, maybe it gives jump to the Wolf Riders, or maybe it gives quick work to the Wolf Riders, or maybe it applies some rather than veteran leader, maybe it would apply some other type of buff or debuff to a unit, or giving them stealth would be phenomenal. We see that on like the grotesque assassin does that for grotesques, so I think that's correct. Anyway, I don't know. It would be nice to see it get a little something more, or be maybe a little bit cheaper, or maybe we'll get a theme force where they're free. That'll really change it quite a lot as well. So that's it on those models. And then keeping in my cavalry theme, I do want to talk about a warlock we haven't talked about, and that is actually our newest warlock, Kaya 3, Kaya the Wildheart. So let's go through her stats. She is speed 7, mat 6, defense 15, armor 16. She's on a large base. She's command 8. She has a 2-inch melee, POW 12, damage type magical melee attack. She also has a mount attack that is a half-inch range and POW 12. She's Fury 6. She has 17 hitboxes and 27 Warbeast points. She has Field Marshal reposition 3 inches, and she herself also has reposition 3. And Warren decided to leave the card because I don't know why. Her spells are Blood Spiller, which is a 2-cost, range 10, POW 12, offensive spell. Warbeasts in her battle group can charge or make a slam power attack against the target enemy model hit by Blood Spiller without being forced for 1 turn. So, decent nuke. Fog of War, a 3-cost, range self, control area, effect, upkeep, that is not offensive. Models gain concealment while in her control range. Soothing Song, so that costs 1, covers her control area. Move up to 1 fury point from each friendly living faction Warbeast currently in the spellcaster's control area. Can only be cast once per activation. And finally, she has Synergy, a 2-cost range self control area AoE upkeep spell. While in the spellcaster's control range, models in this model's battle group gain a cumulative gain a +1 cumulative bonus on melee attack and melee damage rolls for each other model in the battle group that hit an enemy model with a melee attack this turn. While in the spellcaster's control range, the bonus cannot exceed +3. And finally, her feat, Moon Shadow. I thought about reading the flavor text. I'm not feeling it today. Sorry, guys. While in Kaya's control range, friendly faction models gain +2 defense and cannot be targeted by free strikes. Additionally, friendly faction models can advance through enemy models in Kaya's control range if they have enough movement to move completely past their bases. Moon Shadow lasts for 1 round. Let's get a few tidbits out of the way. You might be wondering, why is she speed 7? That's slow for cavalry. Yes, it is. Laris is speed 7 in his previous incarnation, and I think it's just illogical that he would go faster. And she's pretty clearly riding on Laris, so that's how that goes. Also, speed 7 with cav rules is still pretty good. Trade-off being large base, so it leads, and she has Synergy as an option. We'll talk about that in a minute, but she still can mix it up in melee pretty decently herself. Another thing to talk about, her feat, you may have caught in there, is friendly faction models. Now, she doesn't do a whole lot for not her battle group, basically just Fog of War. But if you have some kind of unit with her, it has the best ability in the game to dig deep. And you're giving defense out there. So some of our faster pieces that like having high defense and going through models have a lot of potential to be extremely strong here. I've wondered if Wolf Riders wouldn't be good here, or Mist Riders, either one. If it's still good on her Warbeasts, on her battle group. I mean, Warpwolves love being +2 defense alone, let alone being able to put themselves in some pretty awkward spots if possible. She's not limited by living beasts really at all. I mean, other than Soothing Song. So Again, being able to put something like that in deep has its uses. Trying to think of anything else that's popped up to mind. Solos digging deep, units digging deep, really anything. Anything that's not like a colossal or battle engine, pretty much, or gargantuan. So that's one thing. The third thing, and this is the most, I would say this is the most important piece to playing here, is Fog of War is an upkeep and Synergy is an upkeep. And you might be saying like, oh, well that sounds like Scornergy. Why does she have 2 upkeeps? This is not new. Karchev in Khador has a similar situation where he has the countercharge spell and he has Road to War, which is a movement spell. And reason being there is you have to make a decision. Are you going to be defensive or offensive on a given turn? What's the right turn to do that? Should you do that? Do you need the defense from Fog of War at all? Do you and how are you timing that? And it's one of the things that actually keeps her reasonable, is being able to do that. There's also some order of activation issues with that, so you really have to be thinking like, I really would love to use Soothing Song, right? But I also want to use Synergy, and Kai has to go first to use Synergy. Just the caveat, attacks made before she casts Synergy do not add to it, even though the way it's worded would suggest they might. It does not. So, just to get that out of the way. So that is, to me, that's her biggest thing that she has going on. Her feat, I think, is actually pretty obvious. It's mostly +2 defense. It's also going to let you position really interestingly. It lets you put things like Warpwolf Stalkers in interesting places. I already mentioned a bunch of the units. Herself, things like that. I think it's a really good feat. I think she would love to have a Gnarlhorn in her battle group, just so that she can make sure she's never being knocked down, since she may want to be pretty far forward for her feat, and she's relying on that defense to keep her alive. So Gnarlhorn's a great piece for that, and she buffs the Gnarlhorn significantly. Again, I mean, it only goes up to defense 14, but Synergy takes it, and Prime will take it to a place where it can kill shit. So yeah, so that's some of the things to keep in mind. So as I was saying, I think the biggest thing, and I've only played a few games with her, the biggest thing is you're going to want to be taking advantage of the correct benefit at the correct time. You may even build a list that is not reliant on one or the other of them, right? Maybe you can build a list where Synergy is your backup plan late in the game, and early in the game you're going to use the feat and Fog of War to just make trying to do anything into your army pretty miserable. I don't think that's a bad plan. I feel like Morvana 2 probably plays that plan a little better. She also has Fog of War, and is a little bit more... she has other benefits that will benefit her not battle group, while also being a cav model that hits pretty hard and is actually even faster at it. But I don't know. Like I said, I've only played a few games with her. I do think personally that you want to focus on mostly battle group with her. Soothing Song lends to that, Synergy lends to that, Bloodspiller lends to that, and honestly the feat is pretty good with most of our living pieces as well. So that's how I have played her when I have. As I was just mentioning, I think living beasts are mostly strong with her. I know a lot of people like... So Reposition 3 is also quite strong. It lets us... so I was sort of mentioning this with the Blood Trackers in Mark II and the Wolf Riders now, which is Reposition letting you sort of fake that you have a longer range gun that you do. So World Weirds people have played with success with her. Loki, I think, is a good potential option with her as well, because now the hook can go out farther and you can be 11 inches away rather than 8 from whatever you threw the hook at. Purebloods, same thing. Brenos, potentially same thing. They're all range 10, so being able to be a little bit farther back. Tried the Winter Argus a little bit with her. I think it's interesting. I think the spray at 6 inches, you're not quite getting enough out of in its current incarnation with her. It's another model it would be interesting to see get a little bit more love. I think there's it's about one or two small tweaks away from being a really good piece. but the other big thing is she has the potential for a War Beast to swing by +5 damage between Primal and Synergy. Anything in her, she is the hardest hitting thing in our faction, or she brings the hardest hitting things in our faction. The only other things you can do is stack Primal with Curse of Shadows, Stone Skin, Force Evolution, and that will give you +4 effectively on a beast. She's going to +5. The one point is that said, you are you do need to hit things to get to that. In order to be getting up to that +5 number, 2 models needed to hit 2 other models before that, or 2 models needed to hit something before that. And War Beasts are still not cheap in general, so you need to be taking advantage of that. That said, if anybody, I think the only person who trades better than Kaya 3 is probably Una 2's Scarsfell Griffins at 8 points. They're hitting Weapon Master Infantry basically. So, but there's some positioning things there, and a lot of work goes into playing her well. So Kaya 3, though, I think you can start using things like Rip Horns, Gnarl Horns, Shadow Horns, and trading way up. I think you also get decent amount of work out of bringing something like a Stalker, who can double as both damage and infantry clearing. The Storm Raptor getting +3 to hit in melee is potentially really interesting with her, while also having a gun and some other ways to deal with infantry. I mentioned Purebloods, very good with her as well. Feral's great. Getorix is probably overkill, to be honest. I think this is one of those places where you want to take a bit of a note out of the Denegro 1 category, which is, yeah, you can bring things that overkill a lot, or you could bring things that cost less but kill just enough. And that's going to be important. So if you want to build Kaya 3 to take on some of the Warjack spam that exists out there, then you want something, you want to start looking more at like those goats, or even Ferals and Purebloods are going to be better off. I've done the math a bunch of times. A Gnarlhorn Satyr that has max energy and primal will kill by a considerable margin, should kill a Khador Heavy, which is good. So the last list I played with her was a pair of Arguses. They were actually Winter Arguses, but I probably just do Moonhounds, well, it depends on the build. I would do regular Arguses or Scarsfells, possibly, a few other things. But it was Scarsfell's Arguses, 1 Gorax, Arguses, 2 Stalkers, 3 Gnarlhorn Satyrs, Shifting Stones, I think. Did I have a Black Clad? I don't remember. The points are getting money. I think Black Clads are very good with her. I think Druid Wilder is interesting with her. I think Shifting Stones are good with her because she's bringing beasts, especially if she's bringing range beasts. And anyways, moving forward. So that list I was sort of relying on, like, well, if I can position my Gnarlhorns so that I'm getting interesting counter slam opportunities, it's sort of like leading the charge, and then I can get them in on models, plus with their feet and counter slam and grand slam and things like that, I can really put them into some very interesting positions as well. It's and again, trade up, and then behind them I have these 2 Warpwolf Stalkers. So now if it's infantry I need to deal with, I can use the Stalkers after I can get synergy up by just attacking a couple random models, get my synergy going, send in Stalkers at Mat 9, and they can berserk through stuff and still sprint away. Another tip, you have to choose between sprint and reposition. You don't get both in Mark 3. However, obviously the additional 3 inches from sprint on a Stalker is going to be preferable when it makes sense. Also, Fog of War on them is very good because of stealth, because they can warp prowl rather. Same for Black Lads, they prowl. Anything with prowl is going to be pretty good. I don't really find a big reason to bring a Gallows Grove, but they do have prowl. If you want to go the Sentry Stone route, they have prowl, so you don't necessarily need to make the forest. So there's some good stuff there. I do think you can play her to play into some Khador spam. You need to really be pretty cagey with it. It's interesting into Karchev if you have Gnarlhorns and they get their counter charge spell off. Wait, let me think about that. There was a time where this came up. But I think it needed admonition. So if... oh yeah, this was when we were theorizing the Morgul 1 versus Tanith scenario, where if you go up and engage something while you have admonition, this is a different problem. So anyways, if something admonitions away from something with countercharge, you can countercharge it, and then A, it was probably at least 3 inches away from you, and B, it's engaged, so now it can't do its countercharge. So that's the side that matters. Not a ton of things with admonition, and countercharge is mostly Morgul 1 in Scorn with bronze backs. So anyways, Kaya I think is a really solid caster. I think her feat synergizes really well with Gnarlhorn Satyrs as well, taking them up to defense 15 instead of defense 17. They don't hit quite as hard, but they do move a lot faster, so I think there's some interesting things at play there. Yeah, basically anything that takes advantage of synergy I think is going to have a strong place. I don't really feel like a Geomancer does a lot for her. There might be a list out there that is literally just like every Wild Argus that you can put on the table and like a bunch of Goraxes to help fuel them and just see how that works. With synergy, you're taking them from 12s to 15s to 17s, and that's without comboing. When you need to, you can bring a couple Goraxes, like I said, to get those primals out there, so Kai doesn't need to put them all out there. It could be interesting. I mean, that started to have a lot of headway with, and they're all defense 16 under feat turn, so something interesting there. I think a lot of people sort of pointed at like Griffin spam, and I personally think if you're gonna do that, you're still much better off with Una 2. Flank, in general, flank is better than synergy, and flank doesn't require, it's not as hard to set up. So I'm not saying don't play any Scar spells with Kaya. I'm saying if your plan is spamming them, play Una 2. I think she does basically everything that Kaya is doing, but better for them. And then Kaya is going to be better when you're like, well, I want to bring heavies, or heavies and lights. It's kind of where I'm seeing it, anyways. Trying to think if there's any other little tidbits out there. She's definitely good. Definitely recommend playing her. I would definitely give her a lot of reps. The thing she doesn't do, she has no personal threat range extension. So you either need a way to keep, to do a bit of tar pitting with her. You might use Beast for that. You may use your feet to just get up there. Things like that. Blackclad's probably be helpful there. As far as getting long threats, that's where that's one of the places I do like the Shadowhorns and the Storm Raptor. Storm Raptor does get the defense bonus from her feet, so at 14-18, depending on the matchup, is not something to just sneeze at. Yeah. So basically that's Kaya 3. So at this point, I sort of made reference to the fact that we wouldn't necessarily get through all of the Cav models. That's going to leave Wildheart Morag and the Mist Riders for another day, and I think we will go ahead and leave them. I need to get a little more time. Ideally, I'd like to get a little more time with Wildheart Morag and those Cav before talking about them. I do like both, and I think they both have a place. Yeah, and that's Kaya 3. So we're rounding out. I think we've got a couple more Warlocks left. I think Kaya 1 and Morvana 1. Try to get them on the docket. We've got a few more unit entries as well. I think we're through all the war beasts. Hopefully we get some interesting news before too long. Lock and Load's coming out. We might have some tidbits for Circle out of that. Who knows? Gremkins around the corner. Don't know. I may play them. I don't know when. It certainly won't be till they're all out. Almost certainly not until after War Machine Weekend. So I don't know that you'll see any like discussion from me on them. I would, if you're watching, I am interested in maybe getting another Circle player on here at some point, or players, and having more discussion. Possibly we'll tailor the discussion around what they're interested in. I'd also be interested in doing some live list building, but I need to get a little bit more action in the chat for that to work out, I think. And I would like to do more of the format I did last week, where I sort of demonstrate some stuff. So I'm going to think some more about what I can do there. I may need my hardware setup may need to be different, or I may need to record it in a different place or different time. So, but that'll be it for tonight. As per usual, thank you to Muson Minis for hosting my the links to my videos. I need to get I've missed several on there. I need to get on top of either putting them all up there again, or just starting from where I'm at and going from there. But thanks to those guys. Also, as per usual, thanks to Griffin's Roost Painting for all of the awesome models that I have painted. If you want awesome models painted, check them out, griffinsroostpainting.com, or Griffin's Roost Painting, search for it on Facebook, and you can shoot a message over there and she'll get you set up, or at least let you know. Yeah, so that's going to be it for this week. Next week we'll be back with another show, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.